Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. So looks like the era of free money is over. Take a look at the headlines here. Fed officials see upside risk to inflation, possibly leading to more rate hikes, minute show. So basically, it was funny, all these people on Wall Street saying, hey, give us your money, give us your money. Things are going to be great. We're going to be making lots of money in the future. Bull market is back, etc. In fact, the Fed is like, hey, not so fast. There could be more rate hikes on the way. Another headline here, Fed saw significant inflation risk that may merit more hikes. I want to show you guys this. This is interesting because this is actually the 30-year mortgage rate. This is according to Freddie Mac. I believe we're above 7% right now. And if anyone's in the housing market, please share. Are you getting quotes around 7, something like that, if you have to look to borrow for money for a home? Comparing to the past, take a look back in 1982. You guys can see this right here. This is interest rates for a 30-year mortgage were around, 16, 17, like double digit. And in fact, even in the, say, early 90s, you're looking at double digit. 2001, I believe we're getting to those levels. I think the headlines were like highest rates since 2001. We're talking about the 30-year mortgage here. And this should cool the housing market, you would think. However, one of the things that's really interesting that's been keeping it up is essentially we have a shortage. So people were moving, out of the big cities, going to somewhere cheaper to, say, the smaller cities, and then there weren't necessarily enough homes there. So, you have these crazy bubble markets. So one example I always give is it was out in like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where that shot up like crazy amounts. And then you also had markets which I can think are still in the bubble. Who knows when they're going to pop, but it's going to be places like your Miami, which is a real thing. And then that would be in Florida. And then out in, say, Riverside, California, which would be east of LA by a couple of hours. That was a bit of a bubble market as well. So basically, again, people are moving from more expensive markets to cheaper markets. And we'll see what's going on with that. It all depends on, are we going to build enough homes? But it takes money to build stuff, right? And when you build something, you're hoping that people come and buy said thing that you're going to build. Now, we had the situation in China that's going on right now to where essentially people invest and say, hey, let's build a building, we'll rent it out, we're all going to make money, etc. However, it's called Zhongrong, you can see right here. So it's weird, and it's interesting. In the headlines, they refer to this as the shadow bank. It's really what that's the headline. But yeah, it's Zhongrong, and this is like their office building, and essentially they're missing their payments to people. And I was showing you this picture here is that the police and the bank are putting up barricades. So if you're looking at what this thing is, you're like, what the heck is this? It's like a maze, essentially, is what they're putting up. It's literally what you would see like in a Walking Dead situation, to where you're worried that the zombies are going to come, kill you, essentially. And basically you put up these big barriers because they're worried. And this is a real thing. If you put your whole life savings in, a said company, and if they don't pay you back and you've lost everything, I mean, you certainly, physically go there and you're like, give me my money back. And if you don't know anything about this, we've had a history of this kind of stuff happening in China before. This was actually last year. If you guys remember these protests, essentially it was Henan. It was like a bank that just basically ran away with a bunch of people's money. Where is it here? Yeah. And then people went to the bank and like just regular people had this mass protests. And if you've never lived in China, I lived in Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen. This is where the regular people have very, very little power. The government / rich people / banks can just take your money and run away and don't really face much repercussions. And what's worse is if you try to, protest and say, hey, we did nothing wrong, just give us our money back. They'll send in like basically gangsters against you. So you can read here. Protesters demanding frozen millions from Chinese banks face rough handling, tussle with security. And they'll come in with like white shirts. You guys can see these people down here. And, see white shirted groups attack protesters. And this is even like the South China Daily News. So like, it's not like secret. I mean, this is out there. And they'll dress like this. And if you don't know, they could either be gangsters, essentially mafia kind of people, or they could actually be police officers, but in plain clothes. And we don't really have the equivalent of this kind of thing in USA that I'm aware of. So yes, we have protesters, and yes, we have riots in USA, 100%. But the idea that we would use like plain clothes police officers to come and like beat regular people, maybe we do. And please let me know if you think there is an equivalent, or if we even have a mafia in USA in the same regards that they go out in public and beat people. You know, in the movies, the mafia in the movies, that is, they always say, "Oh, it'd be a shame, you know, if your family ever got hurt or something like that, and they threaten your store and that kind of thing." So that stuff may or may not happen. I say, I don't know, but I'm just saying in China that this mafia stuff is real, and plus is you know, using police in these kind of ways. The other thing that certainly worth mentioning is we're talking about quite a bit of money. Here, let's see, I think I was getting different numbers on this. So they're saying the industry was like $1 trillion or something of that nature. So they're saying the Zhongrong missed 10 different types of payments. I can see this here. So they'll have different products, right? And they're all going to be structured differently. So let's see. Oh, no, actually, it's 30. So at least 30 products are now overdue. And Zhongrong also halted redemption on short-term insurance. They just got your money and not giving it back. So what was this one here? This one says, told investors in a meeting earlier this week that the firm missed payments on a batch of products on August 8th and delays on at least 10 others in July. Okay, so maybe total it's 40 or whatever. I don't think anyone knows exactly. And the way these things work is, you know, John owes Ted money on the car payment, right? And Ted needs that money from, you know, payment on the car payment because they invested in, you know, with Roger to build a new building, and Roger didn't get the payment from, you know, Steve, because Steve was supposed to pay them, and Steve's waiting on his money from, you know, Frederick, and Frederick's like, well, I didn't get the money, and you get the whole point. Is that if the system is all based on, you know, easy money, free money, and we're all lending to each other, once one group stops paying, and then it has a whole ripple effect. And when you talk about these sort of situations, like the you know, building of the barriers and stuff like that, it is some of these wealthier people could be landlords, right? So it could be a situation to where like they need the money to make the payments on the thing that they borrowed money on, and if like the whole economy slows, so for example their tenants maybe lose their jobs or whatever, it just becomes a whole mess. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to illustrate, because I mentioned before, like say we talk about the Fed. If they say interest rates are going up, and this is always the same key question asked for you. Yes, we're talking about China, but I also want to talk about you know, your situation, say in the USA, is, you know, do you feel like things are affordable? I always ask you that question because, you know, regardless of what inflation numbers say, because sometimes if you actually look deeper into inflation numbers, they'll say like, okay, what's the price of TVs? You know, and I ask you like, how often do you buy a TV? And so yes, the price of TVs are coming down, but that may not necessarily affect you like today. The things that you should be, you know, probably concerned about is like, what's your mortgage payment at, what's your rent at, you know, what are your fuel costs, what are your food costs. So this is sort of when you're looking at like the expenses that you have to deal with every single day. For us, so we live in Korea, and it just still feels like things are expensive. They just raised electricity rates across the country, and like I said, it depends on where you live. I'd be curious at your city if you feel like your electricity is going up or down. Fuel costs are still fairly high, and then housing costs are still through the roof here. Like I said, with the USA, you would think that things would eventually be cooling in terms of housing costs. But I haven't seen it quite yet. I mean, I check all the time and look at, you know, what is the average home price, et cetera, and it still seems to be elevated in the USA. There was a bit of concern though in China. It was just yesterday we were talking about the news that coming out in China where the government officially said, you know what, we're not going to give you any more data on unemployment of the youth. And I do believe the housing market is cooling there a bit. So that was something that was mentioned. But I think this sort of mispayment thing where you have to call in, this is their police cars here, you have to call in police and put up barricades because you're worried that people are going to come protest and storm your offices demanding their money back. Like this person says here, one woman is heard shouting, "Give us the money back or we will die here." Another, "Why don't you give us clear explanation?" And there was another quote was saying, it was, I think the quote was like, "We can see you have profits on the books, so where's our money?" But again, I think it's because we're all lending to each other, and, you know, once the money stops flowing, it's much tougher. And, you know, this all relates to central banks. You raise interest rates, it slows everything. And if you don't think the stuff in China matters to you, just remember that you need consumers to buy your products coming from America. You also need people in China to build stuff to sell to Americans, right? And you need to keep the cycle going. Certainly there are other countries in the world, right? You want to look at Europe, they got a war over there, and you have high inflation and all sorts of crazy trouble in the UK, any number of places. Now, it doesn't mean that like you're going to lose all your money and your world is, falling apart, etc. You're going to be fine as long as you understand sort of what's going on and what era that we're in. The people that get most upset and most angry are the ones that, bought your Doge coins and your Bitcoins and whatever coins and threw your money in these highly speculative things, not understanding that it was clearly a bubble, right? And then, this is sort of why you want to pay attention. Are we in the era of free money or we era of restricted money? And then when you see these headlines where, the Fed's like, hey, we may have to keep interest rates high, meaning the cost to borrow money is higher. And then the other thing is too is the banks. They're way more cautious on lending out money because they're worried if you're going to give it back. The same way, what's happening here. Like it's all about like, are you going to pay me back? And you're going to find that some companies are going to be trying to get you to buy their bonds, and they're going to give you really high yield. So this is a situation that Zhongrong is like, how do you convince someone to give you money? Like, well, hey, give me money and I'll pay you like 12% or something like that. And here's the thing. When it gets to be that high, right, you're really trying to entice people. Essentially, is you want to entice people to take on that risk. That's what you would offer that. But obviously, it puts you in a bad shape if you can't make your payment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on these things. And what do you think about these barricades? They look pretty effective to me, even though I guess there was only, I think it was like, 10 police and security officers, is at least when they took this picture. But we'll see if more images come out of here. And we'll follow this. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you next video.